Yeah, but I don't think the ceiling really is a ceiling.
Yes.
Because otherwise, if it is a ceiling, it's like, we're at 9.8 million. There's not much room to go here now. I'm going to liquidate some of my Bitcoin and move into other assets.
Yeah. Ultimately, the ceiling is a question of what percentage of value do people end up wanting to have in Bitcoin versus every other asset category. The ceiling is not set by, like with gold, the market has to absorb 2% more gold being created every year. So that's supply selling pressure that has to be absorbed by the market. And that ends up setting the ceiling for gold.
So in writing this, have you made yourself more bullish?
Yeah. In going through this exercise, at first I was embarrassed to even show my work. Like, this sounds crazy. And I get that. $10 million per Bitcoin is what this resulted in. And I think it's kind of conservative in its estimates. And that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Dunworth would disagree.
He thinks you're bearish. What kind of time frames are you looking at?
Yeah, this is full potential. So this is talking about full societal adoption of Bitcoin. So that would mean like 2/3 of the way or more through the bell curve of adopters. And right now we're at 0.5% into the bell curve of adopters.
Oh, so we're a long way off.
Oh yeah, and so this would and
is this for my kids?
Yeah, like this is probably a 30-year plus sort of this requires fiat currencies to have failed and the world to have figured out that Bitcoin is the solution and that they've all adopted it. Like, that's what we're talking about.
But
here.
This is based on current values of the market,
yes.
Because if currencies fail, then that 10 million might not even buy you a car.
And that is very important, that all of these numbers are in today's dollars.
Yeah.
And the value of a dollar will shift dramatically. And in that sense, you could end up with $3 billion per Bitcoin because a dollar is not worth anything anymore.
Yeah. I think the pace could be faster than you think. I think it could be. Yeah. And I mean, Arthur Hayes just came out this week and thinks, where is it now? 2027?
I didn't see this.
He thinks Bitcoin will be between 750,000 and 1 million.
Yeah.
So if currencies start to fail fast,
yeah,
Bitcoin's legitimacy grows, and there are multiple ways to access Bitcoin, not just spot buying from exchange, but also maybe like ETFs. There is a chance that you can bring the timescale for this forward.
Yeah, it is a question of, is it gradually then suddenly? I'm sort of in the camp of it's gradually but exponentially, which doesn't mean that there's any like specific moment where it's a light switch for people, but exponential curves are powerful, so that's good enough.
Then it leads to the question, do we have enough Bitcoin? I've stole that right out of your article. Does that make you then question, do you have enough Bitcoin?
Oh, certainly.
Oh, shit.
Well, it causes a bunch of thoughts and implications out of this. Is like, if this is right, first of all, the people who are able to retire in the future are the ones who adopt Bitcoin as part of their savings strategy sooner than later. Like, that could become more than just retirement. That could become the defining question about how well off financially you and your family are. Is
generational wealth.
Are you in generational wealth? Are you wealthy? Are you able to retire? Or are you a Luddite, a laggard who doesn't take advantage of Bitcoin savings until everybody's adopted it, and it doesn't do you any good in terms of bolstering your finances long term?
Yeah, I've long considered Bitcoin my pension plan ever since I had I think I was just after my divorce. I was about 35, and I had a meeting with a pensions advisor because I had a very small pension from my company. And when I got divorced, I had like, I don't know, 50 grand in it, 100 grand, whatever the number was. And I had to halve it because half went to my ex-wife. And so at the time I was like, well, I've got like sod all in my pension. And I went to a pension advisor and they said, what amount of money do you want every year to live on tax-free? And I was like, I mean, 40 grand feels like a good number. £40,000. I can have a holiday and do my shopping. I can live a nice, comfortable life for that. And he came back to me and said, okay, well, you need a pension pot of 2.2 million. I was like, huh? What? He said, yeah. So, and you'll need that by the time you're, when do you want to retire? I was like, well, 60, maybe 55. And he's like, well, that's going to pull that forward to you. And I was like, there's no scenario I saved 2.2 million. I don't think there was a scenario where I saved 2.2 million from the age of 18, let alone at 35, wanting to retire in 20 years. I mean, you're talking about saving, what is that? 2.2 million over 20 years? What's that? 110,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dead on.
110,000 a year. Okay. I didn't earn that at the point I had the meeting a year, let alone taxation. So I could never hit that pension point. So I was like, okay, well, I'm essentially not going to retire, or I'm going to retire with a lot less money, with maybe a little cafe or something. And then I came to the realization that actually, no, Bitcoin can be my pension pot.
Yeah.
Because what it does is not only can I save a certain amount, but every 4 years, hopefully it does something which accelerates my pension. And I think a lot of people are thinking, it's almost like as Social Security becomes this unfunded liability, which we know is going to fail, that there's this redistribution to Bitcoiners who have actually planned in a different way.
Yeah, it's being contrarian and going against the grain right now, and having people think that you're an idiot because of it. That, I think that's the difference, because all of the advice we have about 401ks, pensions, is rooted in the last 40 years of what worked in investing. And what worked in investing was a 60-40 portfolio, specifically because interest rates in 1981 were 15%, and they got marched down to zero. And financial asset valuations skyrocket when interest rates move down. So everybody was a genius for piling their 401k into equities and bonds over the last 40 years. And so that's what we've been told to do, and real estate. That's what we've been told to do because it worked for the last 40 years. But that tide has already started turning, because interest rates can't be zero forever. And in fact, because of the amount of deficits that we've started to pile up, the U.S. hasn't balanced its budget in 22 years. We ran a $2 trillion deficit last year. We're actually on track right now for like a $6 trillion deficit if you annualize the amount that we've been adding.
Which is more than 100% of GDP for that year. Because GDP isn't it? Oh, well, sorry, not GDP, tax receipts, sorry.
Yes.
Tax receipts are what, 3.4 trillion? For the US?
Something like that. Yeah, obviously it varies a lot with capital gains or not. And GDP is like 20 or 30. But we're running larger and larger deficits, and now the interest expense on national debt is starting to come into effect, where it had been interest expense on 0% or so interest rates for $30 trillion of national debt. Now, suddenly it's on 5% interest rates for $33 trillion of debt. So you're talking about running $1.6 trillion of interest expense that didn't exist a few years ago. That's twice the annual spending on the military for the U.S.
And how will they pay that interest?
Literally by printing more money.
And so what will that do?
Exactly.
This is the Ponzi mechanics playing out, or we go through massive. Yeah, James Lavish talked to us about this. He said most likely the best scenario would be run 2 to 3 years of essentially hyperinflation to wipe out the debt.
Yep.
But that will wipe out the future of anyone who's got any savings in dollars, and it wiped those Social Security.
Yep, and it wipes out bonds.
It wipes everything out.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, maybe not real estate, and maybe not Bitcoin.
There are some assets that have some like scarcity where they would rebalance it in the future state, like real estate. But you've mortally wounded the economy at that point, so then your real estate would suffer anyway.
It's tricky trying to explain this stuff to people. It's tricky trying to get this across to people, because I think there's been this realization over the last year of what money is. Mm-hmm. When simple signals where fuel's got very expensive, or power's got very expensive energy costs, or going to the supermarket, you suddenly like, I can't get much for my money now. What happened? It's that realization that people have had, but it's almost like they're at the water, but they're not drinking. So I talked about this with my friends, and I'm like, okay, well, this is why I buy Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, but I'm not going to buy Bitcoin. I still can't get them over that hurdle.